I'm Ann Zadeh, and I have been involved with Steer Fort Worth from the very beginning, not as a Steer Fort Worth member because I was too old to be a Steer Fort Worth member when it very first started, but they graciously allowed me to be part of the group, even though, because I served on the Fort Worth City Council when Steer Fort Worth was created. So I'm happy to have been able to do that. But I'm here this morning to moderate the panel on urban design and urban planning. That is my background. I'm a city planner by training and background. I served on the Zoning Commission for 6 years, and I served on the City Council for 7 years. And I'm pleased to be here this morning with some folks in our community who also kind of have expertise in that area in a variety of ways. So I'll introduce our panel. This morning, the first person we have here is Korrie Becht. She's a passionate long-range planner who is dedicated to making Fort Worth a better place to live. As the planning manager at FWLab, which she might want to tell us a little bit about because I think it's a new title for a department in the city of Fort Worth. She works to develop strategies that will guide the city's growth and development for years to come. She graduated from Ball State University and has over 10 years of planning experience. Next in line is Stacy Marshall. He serves as the president and CEO of Southeast Fort Worth, Inc., with over 20 years in the industry, guiding and implementing several large major projects. Stacy says he lives by the mission, development is about a purpose and progression, but more so about the people it impacts. And next we have Ben Robertson, is a fifth generation Fort Worth resident with a passion for community empowerment and growth. He serves on multiple boards and committees and commissions, including Trinity Metro, Tarrant Transit Alliance, Rising Tides Initiative, Samaritan House, Leadership Fort Worth, Texas Health Community Impact Foundation, and the Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce's, amongst others, and that is true. There's more. And then on the end, we have Austin James, who started Nowtown in 2017, formerly Fort Worth Urban, with the objective to keep followers up to date on the latest happenings in the world of development, transportation, and planning in Fort Worth. A longtime Tarrant County resident, Austin currently works for Near Southside, Inc. as the Director of Urban Design and Placemaking. So many of these people have been working in our community for a long time and have a passion for the topic that we're here to talk about this morning. And I do as well. So when I was reading through these questions, and last year I was on the panel versus being a moderator, and I said my biggest challenge is going to be not chiming in with my answers to these questions and leaving it to the folks that are here on the panel today. But we will start with our first question, and I'm going to let each of you answer it with your answers. And also, they have been told that if they have something to add to somebody else's response or anything that they want to add, it's going to be more conversational this morning. So the first question is, what are some key factors when it comes to quality of life in urban design? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
You want to go?
Not it.
Well, for me, and one of the things that we focus on is first and foremost are the people. You know, we got to make certain that the residents are always at the forefront in terms of what we're thinking about planning in their community. And then we have to also take look at the stock of what the community as a whole looks like, because we got to make certain that we're sensitive to not gentrify the place that we're trying to revitalize, but bring those amenities there and make it as a complement to what we have already. So
that's awesome. I'll chime in. Completely agree with you. The thing that we need the most is intentionality. And at the end of the day, none of us want to sit in a car for an hour and commute to a job in a different community. We move to our communities to be our homes, and we want to live and work and play in that environment. And we want to be a contributor and a grower of that environment for us. And so as we look for what we're trying to create and have, we need to understand that within the city of Fort Worth, there are pockets of culture and communities that exist that aren't in place of each other, but in complement to each other. And so that makes it an opportunity for us to find ways of truly planning out similar people and ideas so that we can have an artistic part of town, we can have a musical part of town, we can, all the various things that make us great can be celebrated and grown together for intentional areas within our community.
With that, also the idea of parking once and having multiple destinations within your 5-minute walk wherever you're parking at, having that mindset in it allows us to create places that people want to go and spend time in, not just where they live and work. While that's great to have the everything that you need within your neighborhood or something like that, but we also have to have places where we are going to have a car ride or a train ride or a bus ride or anything like that, and that you have multiple locations at your reach right there as well.
I think Corey's trying to trigger me talking about parking.
Yep.
I think at a really small level, I'll say comfort. Like, it's so hard to talk about urban planning this time of year in walkable neighborhoods when it's 110 degrees outside. So, just making sure that we have places that are easy to walk and shaded and make you feel like you're kind of away from cars, and not getting blasted by exhaust and all. So that's kind of a small level thing, but I think if you've been to really great walkable cities, you feel comfortable there, and sometimes we don't do that as great here.
That's interesting. I just did a walking audit with some children at Fortress the other day. We used the AARP walking audit, and we walked in their neighborhood to kind of check out that environment. And it was relatively warm that day. One little girl told me at the end of this audit that it was the worst field trip she'd ever been on. I was really sad to hear that, but I was like, it wasn't the content, right? It was just because it's really, really hot out here. But that is something that we were definitely looking at, kind of where it's shaded, where it's not, where the bus stops are, where there's sidewalks, where there's not. So, Corey, did you have something else?
I also had a field trip with them. They are the cutest kids ever, and we were inside in air conditioning the entire time.
Yes, I know they went to City Hall as well. That was probably a better call for that. So the next question is, what is Fort Worth doing well? And we're talking about urban planning and urban design here. So what is Fort Worth doing well?
I'll lead off. I think for the first time in my memory, we are actually starting to have conversations about different pockets of town. With the Main Street USA program that Stacy and his team helped bring to the southeast side for Poly, and we have with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce with the north side, we're actually having conversations about intentional community and what we can do for specific areas instead of looking at our 350 plus square mile city and trying to treat it as one entity. We realize that we are not one thing, we are many things, and that's what makes us strong. And I think that conversation is being had better than it has ever been had. There is still plenty of room for improvement, but the fact that we're actually having the conversation is huge.
And I'll piggyback on that, I'm sorry. And Ben is totally correct, but another part is that the city is now allowing different voices to come to the table to have that conversation. I've been here 8.5 years in my role, and when I came here, it was the same people sitting around the table making decisions for the entire city. And I'm seeing a lot of diversity. I'm seeing a lot of young people coming in, weighing in on different things or whatever. But they're also taking a look at other best practices in other cities and taking that and adapting it for what we have here in the city of Fort Worth. So I think that's a great thing that the city's doing right now.
So with that, a couple of things. I think that one of our programs that we're doing, our Urban Village program, is a great example of something that we're doing well. While we don't have all of our urban villages that have been redeveloped to their full potential yet, we have a lot of successful urban villages, the Cultural District being one of them. People love it, coming down here, spending time. It amazes me. I've never worked in a city that had anything even remotely close to that type of program. So to see that flourish here has been amazing. And then the other part is that, it just left my brain.
It's okay.
You're good.
We can
think
circle
about
back.
Let me touch on the urban village piece, and you and I need to have an offline conversation about that. And so,
you're recorded. Y'all
I know, right now. We're going to work it through. So, right now in East Fort Worth, we have 6 urban villages, and some have been successful. A lot have not been successful. We recently took a trip to Omaha to take a look at their urban villages that they call innovative districts or innovative design districts. And so on that trip was Robert Stearns, Hayden Blackburn, Councilman Beck, Councilman Nettles, myself, and I know I'm forgetting someone else. But at any rate, we took a look at what was successful for them, and we're going to rethink our urban villages here on the east side of Fort Worth to try to get them up to where they need to be.
Yeah, those urban villages were done back in 2007.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
2007.
the recession happened in 2008, so you can imagine that they didn't all take off.
Right.
But the fact that those plans were in place as development did start to return, it was a helpful thing to have in place. But revisiting them is a really good idea,
Yes.
similar to the revisiting of what's going to happen on Panther Island.
Yes.
And next time you want to go take a field trip to one, clue me in. I would love to go.
We would go to this World Series game, so, yeah.
And the other thought that I had earlier was about the research component and being data driven. The city is really trying to focus on switching how we make decisions and really make those decisions based off of data, as well as just analyzing and researching anything and everything that we can, and how have we performed in the past. So we have our comprehensive plan that is coming up, and I will say that I have been researching how other cities have been doing comprehensive planning for the past year. We've looked at 50 some odd different cities, and we have narrowed it down to about 6 cities that we think have done an amazing job and are trying to pull and learn from them on how they have implemented their plans and how they even wrote their plans in the first place. So research and data is a huge component of what the city is doing now too.
Now, Austin has been trying to chime in.
So what everybody ahead of me said is that Fort Worth's going somewhere positive, I think. And I think a lot of cities don't really have that. And that's a great reason, like if you're a young person, if you're invested, to stick around and keep working, because there is great things happening. I think we're kind of on, a sloping trajectory. And I think that's really cool that we're not a city where it feels like we're fighting really hard to get, sometimes we are, but there is good things happening, and I think that's makes it an exciting place to be. The other thing I'll say that I wrote down is I think that a lot of what Fort Worth's doing in terms of like these urban planning realms, it's very authentic feeling. If you go to, there's a lot of, curated new urban developments in the suburbs and stuff, and we don't really have that here. A lot of ours, well, we do in our suburbs as well, but a lot of our core neighborhoods have these really great neighborhoods that have, local businesses and whatnot. I think those are really, really great and attractive.
Absolutely. And let me give some of Ann's speech, since she's the moderator. But in the history of civilization, our cities were originally designed as walkable. They were designed for community. They were designed around public transit and the greater good. It's only been in the past half century or so that we made parking lot first cities. And so, that was a great experiment, and it solved some problems, but it's time for us to revisit the pieces of that work, how that worked, and then take that back to transit-oriented, where all people have access, no matter where they are or their financial means or anything, that they can get around and get through our community from their work to their play to their everything environment. We shouldn't have a system that requires everybody to have a car. If you want to have a car, that should be a perk and a fun thing to have on weekends or at will, but it shouldn't be that for you to live in Fort Worth, you have to have a vehicle and have that expense, because that is not accessible to a vast majority of our citizens here in the town. And so we just, as we're learning from others and studying, taking a knowledge gap that's been there of how to look at the walkable cities of the past and integrate those great ideas and designs into what we're creating in this monument of change that is coming to Fort Worth will really help us be better for it across the board.
And not to mention that if 100,000 people are moving here every 5 years and everybody is driving in their own single occupancy vehicle, we're never going to be able to widen roads enough or provide enough parking for all of those vehicles. So the multimodal transit system is an important component for a rapidly growing city. We've eased into some of the other questions, and so I'm going to go through them because some of you started talking about the next couple of questions already, but I think there's more specifics that you might want to get into. One was, and I'm happy to hear that the city is looking at what other cities are doing as far as their comprehensive plans, because the next question is, what are other cities doing that Fort Worth should consider? And I think that there has been a hesitancy and a reluctance in Fort Worth for many, many years to do anything other than what the Fort Worth, I won't say it, the way that we do it in Fort Worth. And people are also like, this is Fort Worth. And they've been hesitant to take any ideas from anywhere else. But as more and more people are moving here, I think that there is more of an embracing of those ideas. So what is it that you think that you have seen in other cities that Fort Worth should consider doing?
Well, from a city perspective, like as a city employee perspective, one of the things that we're seeing how other cities are being responsible in their growth is they're analyzing fiscally sustainable development and seeing what that means for them, their property taxes, their sales tax, and other revenue sources for the city. So they are wanting to make sure that wherever they grow, they are able to supply those services and maintain those roads and actually provide all the services that a city or that a resident would or a business owner would actually need in order to live there or have a business. So they are really focusing on what is that sustainable development look like for the city themselves.
I'll leave it up to you all to decide who chimes in next.
It's Austin's turn.
All right. I think, so the housing panel is next, I think, so I won't talk too much on it, but I think a lot of other cities are doing a really great job at allowing more housing to be built in these urban areas, and we're doing a pretty good job of it. I think one of our big issues is that you see a very small, we talk about missing middle, where it's, everything between a single-family home and the large, like 5/1 apartment buildings that you see all over. Some cities are doing a lot better than us than that. And again, I don't want to talk too much because that might be a housing topic, but that's a great way to, build neighborhoods that look nice and function well and bring more housing, which can lower prices as well.
I think almost everything we delve into here this morning is going to be able to be delved into in much greater detail. I mean, I think of about 5 things that I would love to add in every answer that anybody gives. So, and touching on the topics that are going to be coming up later on in the summit today is perfectly okay. I think that there's going to be a need for everyone to delve into these topics more deeply after this summit, and we encourage you to do so. So, Ben?
So, in my many, many hats, my day job is I'm vice president of Burn Construction. We're a 100-year-old Fort Worth company. We built this building. It's a solid plug. There, I've done my job. No, but in my many hats, I deal with, and across all of the boards I'm engaged with, I deal with people that say, this city does this well, this city does this well. And what's an interesting rhetoric that has showed up more and more in the circles and I think Ann has been with me in some of these meetings because we take turns countering with people we're visiting with, is that, well, that's fine, but that's a different state. That's not how it is here. That won't translate to Fort Worth. And while I know that's cockamamie, but I've been watching Big Bang Theory. I'm sorry, that's just stuck in my head again. The thing is we have in our own backyard, in our own county, a perfect example of what transit-oriented development can do for the city of Fort Worth and for our community. And you only have to look to Grapevine. And so people have argued against transit-oriented development for decades in this town, and Grapevine built it, and there was some fight because the local businesses were afraid that when they built this dedicated, TOD right there on the rail, it was going to hurt their businesses. And even the most recent study we received at the Trinity Metro Board is that businesses within walking distance, and I don't remember what that was quantified, let's call it a mile of...
I think it was a half mile.
Was it a half mile? Businesses within a half mile of that transit-oriented development that were absolutely sure that this new thing with these new restaurants and all that was going to hurt them have all nearly doubled in sales since it's been there because people are hopping on the rail and going to Grapevine to visit and tour it and then hopping on the rail and going home. It's a destination now for various communities. Pre-COVID, $1 invested in transit-oriented development was a $3 economic impact. The studies are still being done, but the most recent I saw is they are projecting a $7 to $8 impact per $1 in transit-oriented development. The ship hasn't sailed, but we need to be intentional. You as our next-gen civic leaders, and I started out in Steer Fort Worth sitting in the audience in 2017 and did the key holder program, and being up here now is very surreal. But y'all are the ones that need people to hear the stats. Stats sell, analytics sell. Otherwise, you let people talk with their talking points that are wrong. And wrong talking points are harmful. They block transportation. They have people not show up to council meetings to block votes so that we can't have transportation. But the fact is that if we invest in transit-oriented development, and for those that don't quite understand what a TOD is, it's basically a targeted community around an intermodal system. So you have bus, you have rail hitting there, but in that, you'll create restaurants, service sector, dry cleaners, yoga studios, niche things, as well as residents of affordable housing, non-affordable housing, which is basically any new house built in Fort Worth right now. You have the full gamut happening, and it's all happening in an intentional multi-block area that now is a catalyst for growth and success for an area that was not currently or previously receiving that. And that kind of investment helps us build our intermodal system, helps people have access to transportation. If you have to choose between having a house where you feel safe to raise your kids and having a place where you could live and grow and do all of life, and the only difference was one has access to rail and one requires you to buy a car with a car payment and an insurance payment and fuel and all of that, wouldn't you rather be in the environment that has everything your family needs than the one that you're making so many sacrifices for and still not providing the environment you want for your children? And we have to get the story out of transit-oriented development, and Grapevine right here is the perfect example of a city that has shown it can be done here in Texas, here in North Texas, here in Tarrant County. All of the arguments that you hear against it are, don't apply anymore, but we have to be the louder voice that there is opportunity and potential there.
Feel strongly about that, do you, Ben?
A little bit.
So? and you want me to follow that?
Good luck.
We can go back to the original question,
No, we can
which
go back
is
to the
what
original
are other
question,
cities
well,
doing that
but
Fort Worth should
no.
consider? And you
No.
just went on a tour. No?
No, that's good. I mean, I agree with everything what Ben said or whatever, and we can start on the east side because I'm biased for east and south.
Absolutely.
Fort Worth, and East Lancaster is where we're going to put it.
That is true.
We're already on that way.
Did we just receive something from the feds to help East Lancaster?
Yes, we did.
What
we
did
did.
you do there, Stacy?
I didn't do anything. That's still in conversation. But I wrote down a couple of things. I want to see the city put more money into the public arts. Having more creative art spaces and things like that, particularly on the east side of Fort Worth. And another thing is I noticed that some cities are very intentional about different areas, so to speak. Like in Dallas, you have Redbird, then you have Bishop Arts and things like that. But if you ride on the east side of Fort Worth, on the east side of 35, you can go into Poly, Eastwood, Stop 6, and you just don't know where you are. So maybe we need to try to come up with some type of marquees or some type of branding or something so that people will know the areas that we're in. And so that's basically it. You were hard not.
Sorry.
Did everybody chime in on that one?
Y'all want to chime
What
in?
other cities are doing? Anybody had anything else on that? Nope. All right. What should we look for in the future of Fort Worth? That's a big, broad question.
Okay, I'll start.
Okay.
A lot more diversity. You're going to see a lot of different ideas coming to the city. You're going to see an East Fort Worth that like you've never seen before. We're working on a particular project on Tandy Hills area. So if you don't know where that is, that's like Beach Street, I-30. That's going to what we call a game changer. You're going to see a lot of more quality housing happening on the east side of Fort Worth. I'm for affordable housing, but you can have affordable housing that looks good and is very attractive to people that may want to come from South Lake and all those other places and come back and look into the loop, inside the loop. So.
Anybody want to speak next?
I'll go last because
You'll go last?
mine is going to touch on all of theirs. So.
What you got?
I think that kind of just, again, I'm just going to say the same thing I said before, but we're just on this great trajectory that I feel like is just kind of continuing where you're seeing more things happening and I don't really have a great answer, but I just, again, just kind of where we're going is interesting. And I don't know where that is, but I think it's exciting, so.
All right, I'll try not to get too excited this time. The future of the city, we're at a precipice, and Stacy and I are in the weeds on this all the time. Tonight, in the north side, in an old KKK building, a group of people with vision are going to do a blessing as the catalyst for Transform 1012, which is to make a multicultural, all-access, everyone is welcome, community and cultural and performing arts center in a building that was founded and grown and celebrated with hate. Our city needs to acknowledge the past, We need to learn from the past, but it is time for us to grow and say that is not who we are, that is not who we will be, and we need to make sure as we grow and be a better city that we are having the hard and awkward conversations across all race, creeds, genders, everything, because there are still people in town that feel that their way is the right way because it's always worked for us. And I will acknowledge that the city of Fort Worth is here because things had happened, but you always have to say, where could we be if we had had the voices that we have now, if we had Steer Fort Worth 20 years ago, 30 years ago? So the question of what to do for the city for the future and where we're headed for the future is about having conversations that we're actually beginning to have, and everyone who can celebrate the little victories, whether it's your group. Come over to the east side when we're doing a ribbon cutting in Poly, when Main Street USA starts doing growth there on Vaughn Street. Spend your dollars at Black Coffee on Vaughn Street, at Casa Azul up in the north side off Central, at our wonderful coffee donor today whose name has escaped me. Yes, thank you. The city is doing better because we finally have people willing to have conversations. But it's up to the rest of us to either be engaged in those conversations or celebrate the conversations so that they don't get muted again.
And with that, my plug is we are starting the 2050 Comprehensive Plan public engagement process here up in the spring. And in order to do all of these things in the future, that's the time to get involved and make those requests and those concerns and just your thoughts in general on where to take the future of City of Fort Worth. And that's how you get that out there so that we can actually make a plan that puts all of that into place.
So how do you provide your input?
I am creating a website right now. Unfortunately, it's not up yet. However, there will be a website for the 2050 Comprehensive Plan. It is called Reimagine Fort Worth. And you'll be able to sign up for notifications of when new things are posted, as well as we'll be putting together a calendar of all of our different events. Hopefully we will have that squared away by the end of the year. But keep checking back with the Fort Worth website. We're also hopefully, fingers crossed, getting Steer Fort Worth involved. So hopefully you guys will be able to help broadcast some things for us as well as maybe hold some events and be involved any way you can.
Let me backstop that for those in the audience. On our last bond election, we launched a site, the city launched a site that said, if something's important to you, come on here, geotag it, tell us what it is. On Nextdoor, there's literally 2,000 plus people in the historic Randall Valley neighborhood that he didn't call out, but another East Side neighborhood. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
On Nextdoor, there's thousands of people complaining about the city. They want better roads, they want less overgrowth of the trees, they want sidewalks, parks, yada, yada, yada. We all know what the trolls complain about. On the last bond election website, in the historic Randall Valley Alliance in a 7-mile radius, which includes all the way to Trinity Boulevard, where the new TRE station and first TOD development on the east side is being built. There were 4 things listed by citizens, 3 of which came from our family, 1 from my daughter in the audience. And none of the trolls went on and told the city this is important to us. They all complained, but when the city said, we hear you, here's how you can tell us, it was silent. If we want to be part of our future, you have to engage with her site, with what they're doing, with those people. Again, have the conversation and interact with them, because as city staff, they can only do what the citizens are telling them they want. And if only a few people are the squeaky wheel, then we all get what the squeaky wheel wants, which isn't necessarily what the community and what the leaders in Steer Fort Worth and all of us in this room would think is in the best interest of everyone.
We will also be at Arts Goggle. We will be an actual vendor at Arts Goggle, so we're super excited for that. So.
Yeah, I think part of the thing is not making people come to public meetings that the city is holding. And the city in this engagement is doing a robust outreach where they're going out into the community to meet people where they are. That tends to be the best type of engagement. And then the hope would be that they would bring back, like, this is what we heard you say, and so this is what we're planning to put into the plan. Does this reflect what you told us? And then have a chance to reflect that back again too. So I'm excited about this. The city of Fort Worth has not done an update to a comprehensive plan in 2 decades. So this is a great opportunity. We'll err on the side of positive. We've done tweaks to the comp plan every year, just looking at just aspects of it, looking at what changed in zoning over the last year and kind of tweaking things that way, which is kind of the opposite. A comp plan should be a grand vision upon which planning is then done. And so this is a really great opportunity. And I think there's been a lot of concern and discord in communities who felt like they weren't brought into the process. And then as development is occurring, they're saying, well, we didn't have a say in this. And so this is an opportunity to have those voices up front, to make a plan that reflects those people in those communities. And then as the development occurs, continuing to have that conversation. Austin, you were going to say
I wanted
something?
to add an asterisk to my decidedly boring answer that I had earlier, but that I think we're going great places, but again, it is because of these conversations where we're having to involve everybody and we're having to say what we want, and just we got to keep doing that too. So that is my
Also, everyone should go to Arts Goggle, 21 Blocks of Awesomeness.
yes.
When is it?
August 22?
October?
October. Things I should know that I don't.
All right, never mind. It'll be on Steer Fort Worth's website.
The final question, which some of you already talked a little bit about, is how can we contribute to improving our urban design and planning? So Korrie kind of answered that question a little bit, but I'm sure others have some ideas as well. Nobody has any.
I will further my answer. So for the urban design component, really, anytime the city is reaching out to our residents about creating new zoning districts or updating zoning districts, or doing a small area plan in a certain neighborhood or anything like that, anytime that's really being worked on is really a time to get engaged and really be able to say what you want in your neighborhood, create that vision and that character for your neighborhood itself.
I'm going to give this a go. So the thing that Stacy said earlier is an interesting one, and that we are all in this room need to be responsible of, is that people themselves say they don't want affordable housing. Ann and I hear all the time people don't want buses. And the ones that are saying that, what they're actually saying is we don't want poor people. And the thing is affordable housing, public transportation, all of that is not about income or poverty or any of that. It's about access. And as we go with urban design and urban planning, there are cities around the US and around the world that have found a way to partner places that are accessible to everyone. And yes, affordable housing traditionally has some lower income individuals, but sometimes those are the most amazing people we could ever ask for to be in our community. Those are our artists, those are our grandparents, those are our everything. And we need to make sure, those are our next gen leaders. We all had to have that first apartment that was awkward and scary and we didn't like our friends coming to. But that's what we need to, with urban planning, we need to understand that it's a holistic view. It's not about building something that attracts a single demographic. It's about building something that will be the next named community that we will want to celebrate and be proud of as an area of our town. And true urban planning is about understanding the communities that exist where they are and the pieces that are missing, and then how can we bring to them those pieces to better the community, not replace the community.
I'll chime in there and say that urban, like these great urban neighborhoods, they should be for everybody. And in Fort Worth especially, where we didn't have, we're a post-war city. We did most of our development around the car. So a lot of the urban, and like he was saying, urban development is kind of a relatively new thing here in the last 2 or 3 decades. And like you mentioned too, it's expensive to build new things. So we kind of have this perception locally that urban living is expensive, and it is just because building it is expensive, and we don't have a lot of established urban neighborhoods. So if we don't build them now, though, they'll never get old and become more affordable. So that's kind of one of the things we have to keep doing is what we do now. Obviously, it's like planting a tree and letting it grow. It's going to be better in the future. So we have to keep doing that so everybody has access.
So let's talk a little bit about a couple of things that are happening on the east side of 35. Again, I'm biased, putting my hat on.
That's why you're here.
Several years ago, we got together. Wanda Conlon with East Fort Worth Business Association said, why don't we ever sit down, break bread, and have a conversation? It's a lot of groups on the east side doing the same thing, going after the same dollars, but we're working in a silo. So together, Wanda and I pulled together 7 groups, including Southeast Fort Worth and being part of that. And we just sat at the table and talked about all the things that we want and need on the east side of Fort Worth that we weren't getting. One was acknowledgement by the city and the county, also marketing of East Fort Worth as a whole, and then we decided we're going to write a letter. I think you were on council at the time, right? When we wrote the letter to all the city council members or whatever, and the mayor, and said, hey, we're standing united. We're the East Fort Worth collaboration. We all signed the letter, and we talked about the need to have more dollars sent or put into the east side of Fort Worth. And it kind of made a lot of people nervous. I'm not going to name names, but a couple of people came to me from the city and said, what is this going on? Because, you guys are banded together and, you're not having these conversations with us. And I said, no, it's about the greater good, marketing ourselves, because no one can tell our story better than us. And so as we continue to sit around that table, we started looking at the pockets of different pockets, the stop sixes and all of that, and the what's the one you're in?
Historic Random Mill Valley.
Yes, that one right there. And then we realized that we need some true planning here, and so that's been kind of like the start of something great. Now that we have this Main Street, America Polytechnic, whatever you want to call it, type thing over by Texas Wesleyan or whatever, we have people that are crawling all over that are urban planners, and they're helping us do this. So those are some of the great things that we got going on the east side of Fort Worth, and I'm probably not answering your question, but I just want to throw that out there for you.
No, it's important for people to know. I think a lot of times we live in the neighborhood we live in, and we shop in the little bubble that's kind of around our area, and we're really unfamiliar with other parts of the city. And I'll tell you that when I served on the zoning commission, I was the mayor's appointee, so I wasn't specifically one district, and so that opened my eyes incredibly to parts of the city that I didn't go to on a regular basis, because I would go check out all the zoning cases before we would hear them at the zoning commission. And so that's what opened my eyes to all these areas of Fort Worth that I didn't traverse in my regular day-to-day life. So I know all of you just go everywhere and are very familiar with your city. But if you're not, if you're that one person in the Steer Fort Worth group that hasn't started to explore other parts of your city, I think it's really important to do that. And there's a lot of things going on across our whole city.
I want to spin a question back to our moderator, but I'll start it with the story. So many, many years ago, near Southside, and a bunch of people with vision of how to make a forgotten part of our town do something different did work with the city, and I don't think there's probably 3 people in this room that know that almost all of Southside is zoned for 10-story buildings. And that would not be the Southside that we have now. It would be its own thing, and I'm never one to say that it would be worse. It would just be different. But the Southside that we've created at Near Southside Inc. under that team is huge to our community, especially as one of the largest supporters of our artistic and cultural community in the entire town. And we have an interesting zoning system here in the city of Fort Worth, and Ann was heavily involved with that over the years. What are your thoughts as far as engagement when it comes to urban planning, engagement from people in the audience when there is a sudden pop-up of a zoning change requested sign, or a knowledge base that they don't know things are in fact zoned one way and they have no ability to prevent it, because by the time they find out that, then it's just a pass-through because it's already zoned to be something that no one would have asked for in that community because it doesn't match what it is.
Well, just to be clear, I don't think that the entire south side is zoned to be 10-story buildings.
No, let me have my exaggerations, it's fine.
There's mixed-use zoning in that area that allows for a variety of heights, and I think it's maybe 6 in some places if you do a whole lot of additional stuff. So
Yeah.
is that...
Simply put, yes.
Yeah, okay.
All right, fine, I exaggerated for the story.
Yeah. Now everybody's going to be freaking out. I would say that, as a planner, I look at a place where I was going to buy a house many years ago very carefully in a way that most people probably don't take into consideration. And I see a sign back there telling me that it's time for questions from the audience, so we're going to have to wrap this up really quick. But I would encourage you, the city's website now has a variety of ways to sign up to get information. And it is, while it's still a bit of a struggle to find everything that you want to find on the website, you can find more information than you used to be able to. And I would encourage people to do research in that area, understand what is zoned. I have friends who live in houses that said, oh, a duplex got built next to me. And I'm like, oh, is your house zoned B2 family? And they're like, I have no idea. You bought a house and you don't know what it's zoned? I mean, this is shocking to me. But I guess people buy things next to open land and think that's going to stay open land forever. And that is
I remember
not
that from the
case.
Planning Commission.
Yes, exactly. So, it is important to understand what is zoned around you. And then if you're informed and educated and a part of the process to make these plans, then it's going to reflect more of what you would like to see in your community. And it's so much more pleasant to be involved in that way than to show up for a battle after the fact. So that's what I would encourage.
I think
people
you
to
should
do.
say that one more time.
It's so much more pleasant to be involved in the process and have a say in how things are done going forward than to just show up to fight all the time. There are battles to be fought. Believe me, there are battles to be fought, but it doesn't always have to be a fight, in my opinion. So it's really hard to see you all out there with this bright light shining in our face, but I have a couple more questions that were submitted to us from STEER members that we can go to, or if there are any questions in the audience from folks that would like to ask a question.
Great point. I appreciate all your everything you guys are doing. You talked about urban planning gives access to service. When you're talking about that people don't have public planning and affordable housing projects and stuff like that. Access gives those people opportunities to receive services and move out of that.
100%.
Right now, there's a lot of affordable housing that are islands all by themselves, where they're in food deserts and all that kind of stuff. Most people don't have those people. We're all those people. But people in that demographic don't have access to services.
You're absolutely right, and it all comes down to being intentional about what we design and what we create and how we support our neighbors. So at the end of the day, any of us, by the grace of God, could be in that same situation. And if the resources aren't there, there's no help to get out, and it turns into a spiral. I was a young single dad of two, making $8 an hour, trying to figure out how to get back on my feet and get back on my own. And people in this community breathed into me and helped me get back on my feet, and that's why I will forever give all that I have into doing the same for the next gen. But you're right, with intentional communities, urbanly planned and thought through, we can really make a difference for everyone that's in whatever situation of life that they're in.
And I'll add to that, I don't know if anybody's here from Forth Housing Solutions, but they've really done a great job of changing that narrative on their own of where they support and build affordable housing is really gotten much more diverse. So,
Yeah, in the past it was concentrations of affordable housing, so concentrations of poverty. And now the city's policy is to disperse affordable housing throughout the community, have mixed income housing. So it's not those concentrations of poverty.
We have a question
Goodness,
over there.
there's hands going up everywhere. Here?
Yes, talking about, planning for transportation. I think that requires a concentration of services or population, a density, right? And right now, we're in our current status. How does that look moving forward? It's kind of a chicken and egg situation, right? Like, you can't build, public transportation right now to a super dense area because we don't really have that. So do you build it first and then build around it? Or, just wondering how that really looks moving forward.
I'll yield to the degreed urban planners, but let me throw in my Trinity Metro hat for 5 seconds here. You do both. So we have, with the 2050 plan, with vision, we know where things are going, and Trinity Metro, in partnership with the county and with the city, can do intentional things to provide us the ability to build out whatever level of transportation and style of transportation makes sense for a future area of growth. Then we also, in our own abilities, go back and Trinity Metro just 2 years ago did a program they called ABC, A Better Connection. And all it was a complete system-wide understanding and survey of who's riding what things and when and where. And we literally realigned a few of the bus lines to match the need and the growth that had changed since some of those bus lines had been created. And Trinity Metro and their current leadership, it's one of the best leadership teams they've ever had, are being smart about saying, that was great 2 years ago, and now they're working on a ABC, V2, where they're just going through and saying, okay, what worked, what didn't work, what has changed. We're adding 100,000 people a year. Neighborhoods exist now within 5 miles of my house that didn't exist 10 years ago, which is insane. And to Ann's original point, you can't pave the city fast enough to accommodate the car growth that's coming. So we have to, in partnership with the city and with the county and with Trinity Metro, look at what people are doing, what patterns are forming, and where and what types of services we can provide. And in some cases, that means figuring out how to run another dash type system here that circulates between downtown and the cultural district. One of the next ones that we're working on heavily is how to connect people with downtown and the stockyards. If you don't know, the stockyards now have more tourists than the Riverwalk in San Antonio. It's the #1 tourist destination in the state of Texas, with a Super Bowl's worth of people visiting every single week. That is bringing money to town. My favorite thing from Mitch and Visit Fort Worth is every single one of those people is saving us tax dollars we have to pay out of our own books. And so we want to encourage that growth, so we have to look at the transit system for the people that are coming to town, not just for the people that live here. And we have to stay smart enough, which we are currently, to know that that is an ever-changing pendulum, and we can never be happy with where it was 5 years ago is going to be perfect forever.
Also, it's 100,000 every 5 years, not every year.
Yeah,
That's
like-
a lot. That's a lot of people.
All right, I exaggerate a lot. It's fine.
Also, the city is currently working on a transportation plan that takes into account all modes of transit, not just our roads. So if you haven't gotten connected with that planning effort either, I highly recommend getting connected with that. If they haven't started already, it should be starting soon. I actually just reached out for the calendar so I could
The RFP is still on the street, so they haven't started it. But the
okay.
RFP,
Yeah.
if you're a nerd like me and you read RFPs, request
I
for
do.
proposals, it has an incredibly robust engagement piece that they're going to be doing with this transportation plan for the whole city. So I've just been given the wrap it up signal. I think I'm planning to be here for the rest of the summit, so I'm happy to answer any questions one-on-one that people might have. I don't
Same.
know about other people's time and ability, but I think most of them have other things that they have to get to as well. But hopefully our contact information will be provided through STEER, and if people want to talk about these things, because literally we touched on so many important things here today that could have been delved into, and I had 1,000 things I wanted to add to almost everything that everybody said. So appreciate everybody's participation this morning and hope you have a great rest of your summit.
Thank you.